Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to Commute Talk. It is early morning here, and the sun is shining. Things are looking up. So today we're going to take another viewer question. This time it's from MSS, who's asking, what do I think about the idea that Linux is only free if your time is worthless? And do I use Linux for ideological reasons, or is it because it's just a good tool for the job? And finally, have I ever crippled my workflow because of ideology? So, the first part is kind of easy. I think your time is worthless if you're not doing anything meaningful or valuable with your time. That's really what determines that. And people get so up in arms about choice of operating system or programming language or text editor and stuff like this. And none of that matters. What matters is if you're productive or not in the areas where you want to be productive. If you're not, then try changing something. If you're productive, why worry? Really, that's it, in my opinion. And then, if I'm using Linux for ideological reasons, no, absolutely not. I'm using it because it is the most stable and fastest development environment available to me. Now, I use Windows and Mac OS and Linux daily, so I have decent perspective on this. And of course, I've also worked on Mac OS for years, so I guess I feel somewhat qualified to comment on these things. And I would say that Windows is just an unstable jerk of an operating system. And I've been using it at work daily now for 2.5 months. And I know that it is Monday morning. And when I come into work, I'm going to have to fix something that Windows fucked up over the weekend. Because that's what we do every Monday morning. And usually it's something related to my virtual machines or my network cards. Because I have a lot of weird network cards. And it could be third-party problems, could be software problems, driver problems, whatever. I don't know. I just know that I'm going to have problems. And I'm expecting it at this point, and it's kind of sad. And macOS is just really slow and sluggish. And userland is ancient feeling and, kind of clunky. But most importantly, it is very sluggish. It feels like you're computing with syrup. Everything is like 10% slower than it should be. And when you're using only macOS, then you sort of get conditioned into this, and you stop noticing it. But the moment that you diversify and you you get yourself a Linux workstation on the side, you become acutely aware of just how syrupy and sluggish macOS is, and it's freaking frustrating, honestly. And especially since I used to have access to the source code of macOS, like at least the majority of the components of it. I used to be able to look into these things and figure out what they were, or at least try to give me some peace of mind, But now I don't have that access anymore, so it's just like this black box it's like sliding really slowly across the floor. I don't know. I don't like that at all. It's fucking irritating. And on Linux, everything is really snappy, and the userland is fast, modern, flexible, versatile, and source code is available for basically everything that I use. And it's just a really nice environment to be a developer in. And stuff like Valgrind works really well on Linux, which is nice. So I don't know. It's just like, it just feels fast. It moves fast. It reacts to me fast, and it's responsive, and it just feels so much better to be on Linux again. And I'm really happy that I made the switch. And also, of course, when I worked at Apple, then I was using Xcode for development, and Xcode really takes the cake when it comes to being slow and clunky. I don't know if I've ever used anything more slow and clunky I mean, I've seen more slower and clunkier things, but I never had to keep using them. But Xcode, I just had to keep using. So, anyways, I hope Apple will someday get their shit together, because they have the components of a good system there. It's just that they don't polish them. At least they polish them in a different way. Like, they don't polish them in the way that developers feel good about. They polish them for users, and I understand that, and I understand why, and I understand that it's that type of company. But god damn it, like, macOS could be so good if they just polished it for developers for once. Yeah, makes me sad to think about it. Anyways, and then I guess the last question was, have I ever crippled my workflow because of ideology? And yeah, sure, I've definitely done that in different ways. Like when I was in high school, and I originally got really interested in Linux, I was kind of like, I was young and idealistic, and I just sort of jumped on all the bandwagons at the same time, or at least in quick succession. So like, I had my my different phases, like my NetBSD phase, or OpenBSD phase, or everything has to be GPL phase. Just like trying on these different ideologies. You know, when you're young, then you gotta try these type of things, figure out what you're about. And as you might know, like, if you limit yourself in ways like that, then you definitely end up crippling your workflow. I remember there was a time when everything had to be a KDE application. I refused to put anything that would link against GTK on my desktop. And then I had the other way around, like everything had to be a GTK application. Yeah. I don't know what to say about that. Like, that's just a silly thing that you do when you're when you're still discovering what you care about, I guess. But then I also had a similar experience during my employment at Apple, because working at Apple comes with a fair amount of ideology, and a little too much, honestly. And because you get sort of swept up in the company mindset, and I definitely limited myself to using only macOS and iOS, which, as I was talking about just before, really cripples you as a developer. It's just, you're not working at your full capacity if you're on macOS. That's just the truth. And if you feel like you want to argue with me about that, then like, please first, like, install Linux on a separate machine, not a virtual machine, but a separate machine for a month, and then we'll talk about it, like how you feel about the difference. Because really, like, that was some serious crippling, and I feel so unleashed, I guess, in the last year, especially since I stopped tethering myself to macOS and just branched out to use Linux again. Yeah. So I don't think I'm crippling myself because of anything anymore. I'm trying to stay 100% pragmatic. But if I sound ideological about anything, then I would love to hear about that, because maybe I can't tell. Anyways, I guess those are my thoughts about those things. So I hope I managed to answer your question somewhere in there. And thanks again for sending in questions. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the questions that you folks are sending in, because it gives me material and it allows me to talk about stuff that I didn't think of, stuff that's really interesting. So thank you. And if you have any suggestions or questions or comments or whatever, then do leave them below. I'll happily talk about anything. Other than that, I guess I'm just going to say thanks for hanging out with me on the commute, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.